A very warm welcome. You're joining us here at Hyde Park on Ada Derana 24, and tonight we've invited to our studios a world-renowned astrobiologist, an astronomer and a pioneer in astrophysics whose groundbreaking work explores the origins of life beyond Earth. And he is best known for championing the theory of panspermia. We'll find out all about that. Sri Lankan born, yes, Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe of Sri Lankan origin, a British mathematician, astronomer, astrophysicist, and astrobiologist.
That's right. I started my career, in fact, in Sri Lanka, in the University of Ceylon, it was, and in Colombo. And I started off doing a degree in mathematics. So I started, my original subject for study has been mathematics. And I got my first class honors degree in mathematics and a scholarship.
At the University of?
Colombo, in Sri Lanka. It was only one university then. It was called the University of Ceylon. And there was a campus in Colombo. And there was a campus about to start in Peradeniya. But it was Colombo that I joined in 1956, I think I started there, long time ago. And I had 3 years of doing mathematics with very, very bright people who taught me there. And I got my first class honors degree. And then there was a Commonwealth scholarship scheme that was started by the government in the UK in London, and I got one of the first Commonwealth scholarships to study in Cambridge, to do my further studies, that means a PhD in Cambridge. I chose Cambridge because my father had been to Cambridge, and he was also a mathematician. He was a very accomplished mathematician, got the highest honors in the 1930s now.
So it runs in the family.
Well, I don't know. Some kind of mathematical tradition was ingrained in me from my childhood. So I went to Cambridge and I started working on astronomy and astrophysical problems with the legendary astronomer of that period, a man called Sir Fred Hoyle. So I arrived in Cambridge and I got acquainted with Sir Fred Hoyle. He started me off on a project that I didn't particularly find very exciting. It was to do with the sun and how the sun behaves over its long 11-year cycle. So after I finished that project, then I went to my supervisor, my teacher, and said, is there no problem that connected with life in the universe, with the origins of life in the universe? Because that's something that I really felt that I should be looking into right from my childhood or early adolescence. And then he put me onto a subject that I worked on for about 3 years, which was to find out what cosmic dust is made of. Now, if you look at the night sky on a clear, cloudless night with no light pollution, you see the Milky Way stretching right from horizon to horizon, right? And that Milky Way is a collection of hundreds of billions of stars, very similar to the sun. In between those stars, there are huge dark patches, sort of in various shapes, horses' heads, and so on. And these are clouds of what are called cosmic dust particles.
Cosmic dust particles?
Dust, sort of little microscopic grains of solid material. It's like the dust that you have in the atmosphere, but much smaller particles. So, so I began working on that and trying to figure out what that dust was made of. And my first result in my research was that it was made mainly of the element, substance, carbon. Right? So carbon, of course, is an important component of life, isn't it? We are carbon-based life forms. So that was the starting point, and to cut a long story short, over the next decade, next 10 years, my dust in space was turning out not just sort of bits of soot or particles of soot, but it ended up with bacteria everywhere in the cosmos. The dust was really vast quantities of bacteria that pervades the entire cosmos. And this, of course, was highly contested and controversial, because for something like almost a century, a millennium, 1,000 years, astronomers and scientists and philosophers in the West thought that life starts on a planet like the Earth just by magic almost.
Like spontaneity.
Spontaneous generation of life. And that idea goes back to a philosopher called Aristotle, right? A very powerful, influential philosopher. And the idea of the life starting from just a mixture of chemicals dominated Western science right through until the end of the 19th century, when there were sort of questions being asked by people like Louis Pasteur, who challenged the ideas, and then it was challenged by a few other people. But the major challenge came only after I began to work with Fred Hoyle, and in 1970, by the early 1970s, we had collected enough evidence, enough hard evidence, to argue that the dust, or to come to the conclusion that the dust has to be living particles of life, right?
That already existed.
Already existed. The question of how that arose is another matter, right? How did those particles, trillions and trillions of these particles, fill the universe? And that was a big question, and it led to a lot of controversy, because people thought that life started in the way that we were taught in the Bible, or they were taught in the Bible, right? God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and then there was life, and so on. So there was a deep conflict with prevailing theological beliefs in the West, and so this had been a major obstacle. But I, coming from a non-European background, essentially from a Buddhist background, that didn't worry me. I thought we have to really find out how life started, how
so
we
you kept questioning,
kept
curious,
questioning,
and
probing deeper and deeper, and doing more and more research and so on. And finally, we came to the conclusion there's no other way to explain what we see around us, not only in deep space, but even on the Earth. The evolution of life involved the importation, bringing in of cosmic genes, cosmic microbes, cosmic viruses. So we are essentially, all of us, animals, plants, humans, a collection of bacteria, viruses from space.
Well, the origin of life, I think, we'll discuss further when you say it's a collection of bacteria, microbes, and all other particles.
Other particles.
But I think we continue to talk about where did we begin? How did this all come to being? The idea once widely accepted, as you said, which suggested that life could arise spontaneously under certain conditions, and then the Big Bang theory, the leading cosmological model explaining the origin and evolution of the universe, proposing that the universe expanded from an extremely hot, dense state about 13.8 billion years ago. Now, there's a
I mean, that's a good summary, but
yes,
I mean,
but I suppose you will be able to explain to us, Professor, your idea about panspermia.
Yeah, but panspermia. First of all, I mean, you mentioned the universe starting from 13.7 billion years ago was the sort of preferred moment in the history of the universe where everything started, and everything is then they thought was started from nothing, ex nihilo, creation ex nihilo, right? Suddenly the universe appeared. I mean, that also was
So you say that's not a possibility?
That's not a logical possibility. It's a possibility that is enshrined in certain religious backgrounds, but coming as I did myself from a sort of Indian, not a Hindu, but Buddhist background.
Or maybe let's say Eastern philosophy.
Eastern philosophy posits that the universe was always there, right? Life was always there in the components, in the basic entities that make life. They were eternally present in the universe. So that was the position that I sort of defended in various ways through my astronomical studies. They were contested, of course, because there was a very strong anti-lobby which said that this cannot be allowed because we have thought about this for 1,000 years and we don't really like that idea. But it all came down, if you look at the history of this idea, it came down to institutions, powerful institutions like the papacy, like the Catholic Church, enforcing people to think in a certain direction, right? Even when it came to the motion of planets around the sun, we all know now that Galileo was put in prison for saying that the Earth was just one planet going around the sun, because they had maintained that the Earth was the center of everything. And so this happened. And there were people like Giordano Bruno, a mathematician, philosopher, poet, who was murdered, who was burnt at stake for saying that there were alien life on alien planets. So if I lived in the Middle Ages, I would have been burnt at the stake as well.
Thankfully, you're in the United Kingdom, based in Wales, studying and then collaborating with the University of Cambridge.
Yeah.
And supported by your Buddhist values
Buddhist background
and Indian culture,
right,
Hindu-based culture. So, just to interrupt, Professor, I know there's so much we want to learn from you, limited time at Hyde Park. So panspermia, the idea that life did not originate solely on Earth, as you were talking about, but may have come from space via the dust to comets to to meteorites, or let's
that's right,
all the scientific words that could be used.
But the bottom line is that life, according to this point of view, the panspermia point of view, never had a start. It was always there. It pervades
so the chakra we talk about, the evolution, is supported by your
It's supported by these
work.
ideas. I mean, absolutely rigorously supported, because you have bacteria landing on a new planet like the Earth. We know it formed at a definite moment in time, right? 4.5 billion years ago. The Earth was just a hot, sort of smoldering rock surface. Nothing could have happened there. No chemistry could have taken place. There was no oceans, no water. But yet, the oldest life is now discovered in the most ancient rocks that go back to that time. So there's no way in which that could have started, that life could have started on the Earth. It came with the impacting meteorites and rocks and so on that went to form the Earth's crust. So that is one of the key bits of information that's supported this theory of life being older than the Earth, right? And then over the past 10 years or so, the evidence has grown tremendously in support of life everywhere. Only last year, I think about a year ago, the most powerful James Webb telescope, looking at a distant planet, not in the solar system, not in our own planetary system, but in a planet that is circling around a distant star. They found that the astronomers there, using this powerful telescope, found hard evidence of life in the form of a chemical that can only be produced by life. Chemical is called dimethyl sulfide, and it was discovered in this. So this had been, I mean, this really...
So I think I'm told that we will discuss further on this chemical where life is based on the formation, or correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
of a chemical based. We'll come back after this short break to discuss further. Welcome back. You're joining us here at Hyde Park on Ada Derana 24. We're in discussion with Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, world-renowned for his work on the origins of life, promoting that life existed
Throughout
beyond,
all time, yeah.
Yes, throughout, and that probably supports the philosophical ideas, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism.
Absolutely, it supports all the Indian philosophies. That, of course, includes Buddhism. Is one of the philosophies that originated in India, but it contradicts the dominant Western idea that the universe started, the Earth started in a single event, was created by some divine agency, and that everything had a definite moment to start in terms of their existence of the different components. Now, in the ideas that I have been working on, that concept of starting from a single point on the Earth or anywhere else in the universe seems to be really absolutely crazy. There's no scientific evidence that is coming up in the past 50 years to support it.
Certainly.
Right?
You've contributed immensely to the field of astronomy globally, and it's beyond what we understand here in Sri Lanka, probably, possibly. But we are talking about climate change, possibly the worst phenomena that humankind will see. And we're talking about the development in artificial intelligence. As a scientist, how do you think this is going to change the field of astronomy going forward? Life as a result of climate change and artificial intelligence supporting the work of scientists as yourself.
Well, I think the question of how the artificial intelligence would affect the progress of humanity, I think it's well documented now. It's getting to be more and more important in controlling our behavior and so on. A whole lot of things that you would like to know instantly, right? And no human intervention seems to be needed. So AI is, of course, a collection of all the information that humans have put into the system. But the beauty of AI is that it can process this information at astounding speed. And so I don't think AI as such is an important component of future innovation. It takes the information that we already have and processes it faster, combines it faster, and gives us results that are much quicker than what we could do in a...
And independent scientific discoveries going forward, how will AI shape that?
Independent scientific discoveries going forward, AI would assist the human ingenuity, the human inventive processes that are going to mold the details are going to be essentially made very efficient and fast through the intervention of AI. But human ingenuity, human innovation, I think, would continue. I don't think an artist or a painter or a poet can be replaced by AI. All that the AI would do would be to collect all the existing information, a vast amount of information, and restructure it to suit any given moment in our lives, I suppose. I'm not a great fan of AI, but I think we've got to live with AI. AI is going to be more and more important in shaping our world in the future.
And in the future, what more or what are we yet to see in terms of scientific or space development, astronomy?
Well, I think there's going to be huge advances in space science. We're going to perhaps colonize Mars in the not-so-distant future. I mean, they're already talking about that. All the space agencies, including India and China, are involved in sending spacecraft and instruments to the moon and to more distant planets, right? So this is happening right here and now. And so I think in the next 20, 30, 40 years, we will be exploding the whole of the solar system and perhaps colonizing humans across the whole, across the habitable planets. Mars is being talked about now in the last sort of couple of weeks as being a potential site for human colonization. Right? It's very close to the Earth in very many ways, and to generate an environment in which even humans can survive on Mars may not be too far-fetched to envisage. So space science is going to develop in such ways, I think, in the future.
And your work? You work on especially the origins of life.
Oh, I think it's going to be...
Where will you take it? What will we hear from you? And also, what kind of work are you doing to support your evidence against the critiques of this kind of...
Well, I'm almost every week or so I've been producing new bits of evidence, and it's been either sort of sidelined by other things that are happening in astronomy. But now, in the last year, there has been a huge movement towards accepting that life is everywhere, right? That there's microscopic life in very distant planetary systems, there's microscopic life in comets and so on. So things are moving very, very rapidly in the direction of establishing the correctness of ideas that myself and my colleagues have advanced over the years. Initially, they were dismissed as being implausible or far-fetched or so, but now I think there's a huge movement to say that this is not true, that the ideas that we have pioneered are going to be the correct ideas that everyone in the future would accept. So I'm very, towards the end of my career, I'm really quite encouraged by the fact that everyone seems to be moving in the direction of this research that I started.
So there will be widespread understanding and acceptance of these theories.
Yeah, there's going to be widespread acceptance, but the attribution is a problem now, because the people are really essentially rediscovering or claiming to rediscover what we very over many years struggled to get the data that proved our point of view, but now they're finding the same results, and very often, not always, but very often they fail to credit us with the sort of origins of these ideas. So there's a cultural gap again there, I think, because they feel that nothing of great significance could emanate from any part of the world apart from Europe or the United States.
Certainly, Professor Chandra, you have dedicated decades of your life to unravel the mysteries of the cosmos, if I may say. Let's talk about scientific education, the understanding of astronomy here in Sri Lanka. You have contributed immensely to the progress here in Sri Lanka, but we are yet to see development, support through government or private sector to educate our youth who are more interested in the field of astronomy, who want to take the footsteps.
I think there's a lot that needs doing at the moment. I think there's a big gap in our perceptions of what we need to do. And so I think that there is a problem there. But as you said, I have been really quite deeply connected with the Sri Lankan scene from the 1970s For about 2 years, I was the science advisor to the president of Sri Lanka, who was then J.R. Jayawardena. And under his presidency, and with my advice, we started the Institute of Fundamental Studies. It was called the IFS, right? And now it's the National Institute of Fundamental Studies. So the remit of that institution was to pursue science for its own sake, not necessarily for any commercial benefit. And pure science, mathematics, even philosophy and so on were taken on board in the framework of the IFS. That's still continuing in some ways. I think it's expanded. It's based now in Kandy. So I think...
so what brought you to Sri Lanka this time?
Oh, what brought me to Sri Lanka? Because I continue to take a very keen interest in promoting Sri Lankan science and taking it up to international level. About 6 months ago, I have an approach from a man in London, a very prominent supporter of astronomy, a man called Lord Tanlow. He's a life peer in the House of Lords in the English Parliament, and he said he wants to donate to Sri Lanka 2 telescopes to the value of £2 million, right? And one was a radio telescope, that's a big antenna that points to the skies and picks up radio signals from stars, planets, from maybe even AI, or not AI, aliens perhaps, if they're sending signals, radio signals. This is something that you could think that might be put into some use. But so anyway, radio astronomy is a very well-established science in the West. We've had no radio telescopes in Sri Lanka ever. We've had a few telescopes, optical telescopes, right, collecting visible light. So, but this is a radio telescope. And he was also offering one of the biggest optical telescopes, a mirror sort of that can go inside a dome. So these 2 items were being offered to Sri Lanka, right? And this Lord Tanlow said, can you choose the institution that you think might be best capable of using such instruments? And I had to think long and hard, and I decided that Colombo, which was my alma mater, I got my first degree there, was the university to approach. So I began writing to various people in the university, and eventually there was an acceptance that came from the present Vice Chancellor. I think he was very, very enthusiastic. I met him a couple of weeks ago, and he is looking forward to this development of radio telescope and an optical telescope being given to Sri Lanka. So compared with India, we've had no developments in space science. There's been no observatory as such doing any astronomical work. So I think we're going to make a start with this new telescope, and I'm looking forward to inspiring, perhaps influencing some young people in Sri Lanka to take to astronomy.
Of course. Before I speak further and ask you a few other questions related to the field, I'd like to ask you what kind of advice or what advice you would like to share with Sri Lankan youth who are interested in the field of astronomy, space science, interstellar studies, venturing into space. What's your advice?
Well, I think I just take my own example that my personal experience was that you've got to follow a dream. And if you follow a dream, literally follow your dream. If you have a dream to achieve something in science, to do something exciting in science, you've got to, first of all, you've got to be competent in the fields of study that are required for achieving in that kind of area, right? But as there may be mathematics, there may be physics, there may be chemistry, there could be biology. But once you have that background, basic expertise, then just go ahead and follow your dream and try to join up with these new observatories that are hopefully opening in Sri Lanka, and link up with astronomers, scientists who are connected with these institutions, and start in that way.
And to the government, how do you think government policies, state approach should be shaped to help Sri Lanka or youth in Sri Lanka, or those who are interested, Sri Lankan scientists also, be a bigger part, play a bigger role in the study of science and astronomy?
Well, I think after the independence of India and Sri Lanka, India soared ahead of even Western countries in setting up scientific institutions, research centers in astronomy, in biology, in space science. Nothing of that kind happened in Sri Lanka. And the first of that general type of activity happened really under J.R. Jayawardeneh and under when I was advising him as presidential advisor. So I think focusing on science is very important. There should be investment in science, more investment in science and engineering. I think governments have to play a role in providing the background systems in which creativity can thrive, scientific creativity can thrive.
Professor, I'd like to ask a few questions also on the kind of work that you have focused on. The origins of life we'll go back to. Let me ask you now, where and when do we have an understanding, according to other evidences, where life began, when? And in your findings, in short, how did life begin?
I think life has been eternally present in the universe. And if you seek a beginning of life on a single planet like the Earth, life on Earth started with the cosmic components of life just raining down on the planet in the form of debris from comets and so on. Stuff came in, the living components of life came into the Earth and got together and became assembled like bits of a child's sort of construction kit into different life forms. And so the basic components of life in the form of bacteria, viruses, and so on, these seem to be eternally present in the universe, right? And that also implies that the universe has an eternal existence, that the universe itself never had a start. And both these concepts are antithetical to Europeans, were antithetical to European science, right? European science argued that life started de novo on a planet like the Earth. The universe started from nothing at a certain moment in time. Now, both these propositions are under serious scrutiny at the present time, with new techniques emerging from telescopes and space telescopes. It is turning out that the universe is perhaps of infinite age. And that's causing a huge sort of almost a trauma amongst the Western scientists, because
so if you relate this to the Buddha's philosophy, Buddhism and Hinduism.
Yeah, it's fully consistent. I mean, it is the present discoveries that are being...
And this is evidence-based?
It's evidence-based. I mean, there are the universe, according to the standard sort of scientific point of view, it was 13.7 billion years old, 13.7 billion years, which is only 3 times the age of the Earth, right? And astronomers are finding galaxies that are going further and further back in time. And now they find galaxies that are older than the postulated Big Bang moment in time, right? Then that's very hard. I mean, how can you have a system older than the beginning of the universe? And similarly, I think the beginnings of life have to be considered in a cosmic context. There's no easy way to understand how life began anywhere, except if life is eternally present in the form of its components, right? In the form of the really complex components of bacteria and viruses.
May I ask you how your work, decades of scientific research and your dedication to astronomy has shaped your spiritual life.
Well, I don't know if it shaped my spiritual life, but consistency with my background in Eastern philosophy, background in Buddhism, has been a very comforting thing for me to feel as I was discovering things that were antithetical to Christian philosophy or to Judaic philosophy. It seemed to be more and more consistent with Oriental and with Asian philosophy, in particular Buddhist philosophy, because Buddhism and Hinduism posits a universe that had no beginning. The universe is always there, right? Things are changing in the universe, things are being formed and reborn and so on, but the universe existed forever, and that's the way it's going to be, I think. There's no doubt in my mind that in the next decade, the standard Big Bang theory would have to be thrown completely out of the window. There's no way in which it can survive. Huge tide of evidence is coming from every direction to show that the universe is older than the supposed 13.8 billion years age, and that life is everywhere and eternally present in the cosmos.
The Buddha said, focus on your present and not delve into the past, especially when we talk about our origins, where we began. So how do you think, as much as you present evidence on where we began or how the universe evolved and where we are today, the future of this universe? I spoke about climate change. We speak of aliens. We speak of connections between other outer space beings, out of space places, planets, and also Sri Lanka's strategic, if I may say, astrostrategic location as a country. We continue to talk about it. Is there any evidence to that?
Well, I think Sri Lanka's position on the globe is just unique, isn't it, in terms of
from a space
from a space point of view. I mean, I think there are certain aspects of the location of Sri Lanka and of the geology and the geomagnetism of Sri Lanka that is unique. For example, apparently, I was told, I haven't verified this, but Adams Peak has the lowest magnetic field on the Earth, right? The magnetic field varies, and this has been pointed out by Arthur C. Clarke as being an important. I personally don't think that. I think it's a coincidence that this has happened. I don't really think that that's of great significance. But I mean, the whole of Ceylon seems to have been, now Sri Lanka seems to have been submerged by a comet impact that happened 5,000 years ago. And that's quite hard science now, hard geology. It's called the Burkle crater that's been discovered in the seabed about 3,000 or 4,000 miles south of Ceylon, right? And this is a huge comet that hit the Earth, and there's a crater in the bottom of the sea, and debris from that crater has been picked up in Australia, in South India. And there's a very serious case that one could make for saying that Ceylon was completely submerged, buried under the sea maybe for hundreds of years. So Ceylon has had that kind of history as well that is emerging in the last decade or so. 5,000 years ago is a long time.
Yeah, you argue that life is just not by accident on Earth, but phenomena you found outside Earth too. As I spoke about aliens earlier, so what evidence do we have now going forward about communication, about linkages? What will humankind transform to do with the outer space?
Well, I think the connection with outer space is almost there at the moment. We are connecting with outer space in terms of exploring our solar system, exploring the galaxy. We've got telescopes, very powerful telescopes, searching the universe for signs of life. We found signs of life on several, at least one planet definitely. This is 1 year ago. There was a huge splash in the news saying that life has been discovered on a planet that is about 200 light years away. So light takes 200 years to go from us to that planet, right? And they claim that they find evidence of microscopic life. But when they find such evidence, the immediate claim that's made also is that that life emerged spontaneously on that planet, right? And that's the position, that's the point of view that I seriously question. I don't think there's any evidence for that. I think it's evidence for panspermia, it's evidence for life being everywhere, and life taking root whenever and wherever a suitable planetary system, planetary environment becomes available.
Do you believe that intelligence, extraterrestrial civilization exists?
Well, that's only a hunch or a guess. I cannot for one moment believe that human intelligence is anywhere near the top of the ladder, right? Intelligence on the earth has progressed from small creatures to big creatures to from apes and so on upwards towards humans. So that progression cannot stop with human intelligence. I think it has to go higher and higher, and there will be much more intelligent creatures elsewhere in the universe, is my guess. But I don't have any proof for it.
Coming back to Sri Lanka, Professor, you continue to work for the development of sciences in Sri Lanka, as I mentioned before. So we're talking about policies, we're talking about what needs to be done here. Have you had any discussions with authorities here during your stay, your recent visit, to really focus on improving education and education?
Yeah, to some extent I've had. In fact, with your chairman, Dilip, I think we have had 1 or 2 discussions. I think there's a crying need for more investment in scientific education. Scientific education is a very low priority, it seems to me, in Sri Lanka. Whereas in the Western countries, that's on the top of their list. I mean, training people in mathematics and science and so on is regarded as being perhaps the most important educational asset to aspire towards in countries that are already so-called developed. In our case, I think we have a lot of talent. We have got a lot of children who would really like to do science, but the encouragement is not there.
We don't really have dedicated curriculum for students to study the subject formally. How do you really look at this? And what more do you think education reforms should focus on to inculcate the study into the school curricula?
Yeah, I think a lot needs to be done, and there's no active progress that I can see being made at the moment. Identifying Sri Lankan achievements outside of Sri Lanka and highlighting them, like the stuff that I've been doing, and there are other people who have made contributions equally important, I think, internationally. They should be not recognized, but their examples should be cited for young people to be inspired by, I think. But more than that, I think there should be an effort to include scientific education at a general level right across the board.
In Sri Lanka, we talk about a lot of natural, really strategic locations, or those that are very important from a scientific space-related field, as I mentioned before, whether it's Rumasala or Ranmasa Uyana to other areas that could be a cosmological, that could be a part of the cosmological map. Do you believe in this, or is this a myth? I mean, these are things that people talk about here in Sri Lanka widely.
I know that. I've heard people talking about it. I don't think there's any hard evidence for that. I think it's an encouragement to me to think that people are connecting with the cosmos in making these assertions. But as far as the physical reality of these claims, I don't see any hard evidence for it.
Finally, Professor, I'm told we don't have much time. I'd like to speak further. There's so much for us to learn. But I'll leave it to you to give us a message here, whether it's about your future work, whether it's about what we're going to learn from outside, whether it's about advice you want to share with us.
Well, I think keep an open mind in all the big scientific issues. People think that, I mean, climate change is one that we haven't gone into this evening, but what is the cause of climate change? I think that's a big question. There's a human contribution to climate change. We are burning fossil fuels at a rate that is really quite just alarming, and polluting the atmosphere, not only generally the global atmosphere, but even local atmosphere. Like our streets are polluted. You can smell the exhaust from cars and so on. So I think we should be more careful in protecting our environment. Whether the fossil fuel story has a great deal of merit or not, I don't really know. I think there are arguments that go against that to some extent. I mean, Chinese, for instance, are burning fossil fuels. They don't think that it's going to do very much damage. But in Europe, they are very worried about fossil fuel burning. I don't have very, very strong views on it, but I think one should keep an open mind even on those issues.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Keep an open mind on every scientific issue.
Thank you very much. You're of Sri Lankan origin, but of global impact. Thank you very much for your time here at Hyde Park. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, you have contributed, you're a pioneer in the field of astronomy, in the field of science, and your discoveries have really changed how people think and approach these theories. So we look forward to your work, and we look forward to seeing you again here in Sri Lanka and for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe, Sri Lankan born, British mathematician, astronomer and astrobiologist, who has pioneered in his work related to the origins of life. We will be seeing you again next week with yet another discussion here at Hyde Park on Ada Derana 24. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.